I'm 60 years old, a widow who's worked our Montana farm for 35 years since my husband James died. Our daughter Sarah just married Tyler, a city finance guy with ambition in his eyes. What happened at their wedding reception shocked everyone present. I always sensed something off about Tyler, but never imagined he'd reveal his true nature so publicly. How I handled his demand changed everything between us. If you're watching this, let me know where you're viewing from. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned to see how I stood up for myself when it mattered most. My life on this 150-acre farm in rural Montana hasn't been easy, but it's been mine. James and I purchased this land when we were young and full of dreams. We worked side by side building our home, tending our crops, and raising our small herd of cattle. We planned to grow old together on this land, but life had other plans. James was diagnosed with aggressive cancer when Sarah was just a baby. The disease took him quickly, leaving me alone to raise our daughter and manage the farm at 35. There were plenty of well-meaning folks who suggested I sell the place and move to town. It would be easier, they said. But this land was our dream, and I refused to give it up. Those early years were impossibly difficult. I would wake before dawn to tend the animals, work the fields until mid-afternoon, then rush to pick up Sarah from the neighbor who watched her. Nights were spent doing household chores with a baby on my hip. I fell into bed exhausted every night, but somehow found the strength to do it all again the next day. Sarah grew up with dirt under her fingernails and sunshine in her hair. She learned to ride a tractor before a bicycle and could name every animal on our property. As a little girl, she was my shadow, following me around the farm and trying to help with her tiny hands. Those were precious days, just the two of us against the world. But as Sarah entered her teenage years, things changed. She became increasingly restless, complaining about being stuck in the middle of nowhere. She wanted shopping malls and movie theaters, not cattle and cornfields. We argued frequently, her rebellious spirit clashing with my practical nature. She began to see the farm as a prison rather than the sanctuary I'd always considered it. When Sarah received a scholarship to attend college in Chicago, she couldn't pack her bags fast enough. I stood in our driveway, watching her drive away, my heart breaking, even as I forced a smile and waved goodbye. I was proud of her accomplishments, but devastated by her eagerness to leave. During her 4 years at college, Sarah rarely came home. Even during summers, she found internships or stayed with friends in the city. Our phone conversations grew shorter and less frequent. When she graduated and took a position at a prestigious finance firm in Chicago, I wasn't surprised when she announced she was staying in the city permanently. That's where she met Tyler. They worked at the same firm, he in investment banking, and she in client relations. When Sarah first mentioned him, her voice took on a tone I hadn't heard before. After dating for just 3 months, she brought him home to meet me. My first impression of Tyler was that he looked exactly like I'd imagined. Perfectly tailored suit, expensive watch hair, styled with precision. He was handsome in a conventional way, with a firm handshake and direct gaze. He was polite, but I noticed how his eyes kept scanning the farmhouse, assessing everything. He asked pointed questions about acreage and property taxes, rather than showing interest in family photos or stories. Tyler's background couldn't have been more different from ours. He grew up in Connecticut, son of a hedge fund manager and a socialite. Private school summers in Europe. A condo purchased by his parents for his 18th birthday. He spoke about his accomplishments frequently, name-dropping clients, and mentioning the size of deals he'd closed. When he talked about the future, it always involved bigger cities, more prestigious positions, more money. I tried to be supportive when Sarah called 5 months later to announce their engagement. 8 months seemed awfully fast to commit to marriage, but Sarah dismissed my concerns. She was 28 and Tyler was 30, she reminded me. They were adults who knew what they wanted. I bit my tongue and offered my congratulations. As wedding planning began, I noticed subtle changes in Sarah. Our already infrequent calls became dominated by Tyler's opinions and preferences. When I asked about her thoughts on venues or dresses, she would say, "Tyler thinks," or "Tyler wants." Her once confident voice grew hesitant. Several times I heard him in the background, correcting her, or taking the phone to explain their decisions. During one visit, 3 months before the wedding, I noticed Sarah flinch when Tyler raised his voice about a misunderstanding with the caterer. When I asked her about it later, she brushed it off, saying he was under pressure at work. But the seed of concern had been planted, and though I tried to dismiss it, it continued to grow. The wedding planning quickly spiraled beyond my control when Tyler's parents got involved. His mother, Janet, a slim, elegant woman with permanently pursed lips, arrived at the farm with a wedding planner in tow 6 months before the big day. They swept through my home with critical eyes, Janet muttering about working with what we've got, as if my life's work was some kind of disadvantage to overcome. I was shocked when they announced the wedding would take place here on the farm. Not because I objected to the idea, but because no one had bothered to ask me. The decision had been made during a dinner I wasn't invited to attend. When I mentioned this to Sarah, she looked uncomfortable and said Tyler thought it would save money. I knew then that something wasn't right, as saving money had never seemed a priority for Tyler before. The next months became a parade of contractors and vendors tramping across my property. The old barn needed to be upgraded for the reception. My gardens weren't suitable for photos and would need professional landscaping. The driveway should be repaved. Each change came with a substantial bill, which somehow landed in my mailbox rather than being sent to Tyler or his parents. I dipped into my savings to cover the expenses, telling myself it was worth it for Sarah's happiness. But as costs mounted, I grew concerned about my financial stability. When I tried to discuss a budget with Tyler's mother, she waved away my concerns, saying, "We want it to be perfect. Surely you want that for Sarah too." The manipulation was subtle, but effective. Meanwhile, Sarah became increasingly withdrawn. During her visits to approve various details, she seemed distracted and anxious. Once, when Tyler was on a phone call, she confided that she was worried about their finances. Tyler had apparently made some investments that hadn't paid off, but insisted on an elaborate wedding to impress his colleagues and clients. "He says not to worry," Sarah said, twisting her engagement ring nervously. "He has plans to turn things around soon." I asked what plans, but she changed the subject when Tyler returned. That night, I overheard a conversation that sent a chill through me. Tyler was on the back porch speaking to his father on the phone. "The land alone is worth millions with the right development," he was saying. "No one's going to pay top dollar for a working farm, but subdivide it into luxury lots with views of the mountains. We could triple our investment within 5 years." When I confronted Sarah the next morning, she broke down in tears. Tyler expected me to sign over the farm as a wedding gift. He had been telling her for months how the property was wasted as farmland, how I was too old to manage it alone, how they could provide me with a comfortable condo near them in Chicago. "He says it's the sensible thing, Mom," Sarah whispered. "He says you're being selfish, holding on to all this land, when you could help us start our lives together." I was speechless. This farm wasn't just property to me. It was the embodiment of James's and my dreams, the home where I had raised our daughter my livelihood and purpose for 35 years. My closest neighbor and friend, Frank Williams, stopped by later that week. Frank and his wife had been my support system since James died, helping with harvests and equipment repairs, watching Sarah when emergencies arose. His weathered face was unusually serious as he sat at my kitchen table. "Diane, I need to tell you something," he said, turning his coffee mug in his hands. "I was in Chicago last month visiting my son, and I saw Tyler downtown with some men. Thought I'd say hello, being neighborly and all." Before I could approach, I heard him talking about your property. He was showing them photos, pointing out where housing could go, discussing access roads through the western fields. Frank's information confirmed my worst fears. That evening I searched through property records online and discovered Tyler had already filed preliminary paperwork with the county about zoning changes. He hadn't waited for my permission. He had simply assumed it would be given. The final confirmation came when Sarah arrived for her last fitting, 3 weeks before the wedding. After Tyler dropped her off, she broke down completely. "Mom, I don't know what to do," she sobbed. "Tyler says if you don't give us the farm as a wedding present, it means you don't support our marriage. He says you've never given him a chance." I held my daughter as she cried, realizing how manipulative Tyler had become. "Sarah, do you want to marry this man?" I asked gently. "It's not too late to cancel." She looked terrified at the suggestion. "I can't," she whispered. "We've spent so much money. Everyone is coming. And Tyler says he's made some bad investments in my name. If I back out now, I'll be ruined." My blood ran cold at this revelation, but I kept my expression neutral for Sarah's sake. "Whatever happens," I promised her, "we'll face it together. This farm is your legacy too, not just some asset to be sold off. Never forget that." As she left that evening, I began making quiet preparations of my own. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect weather, as if the universe was mocking the storm brewing beneath the surface of our celebration. I had barely slept, my mind racing with concerns and contingency plans. As I made coffee, the first of Tyler's family's vehicles came rolling up the driveway, Janet emerging with a team of stylists and coordinators who promptly took over my kitchen. "Oh, good you're up," Janet said, not bothering with a greeting. "We'll need your bedroom for the makeup artists. You can get ready in the guest room." Before I could respond, she was directing people through my home, rearranging furniture and hanging garment bags. I retreated to the porch with my coffee, feeling like a stranger on my own property. The farm had been transformed over the past week. A massive white tent stood in the east field, where we usually planted corn. Rows of white chairs faced an elaborate floral arch where the ceremony would take place. Catering trucks lined the freshly paved driveway. Sarah arrived mid-morning, whisked immediately upstairs by the beauty team. I caught only a glimpse of her pale face before she disappeared into what was once my bedroom. When I tried to follow, Janet intercepted me. "The bride needs calm right now," she said firmly. "The mother of the bride will have her moment during the ceremony." Relegated to observer status, I wandered the property, nodding to workers I didn't recognize, who were arranging my life according to someone else's vision. Near the barn, now draped with fairy lights and flowing fabrics, I overheard an argument. Tyler's voice, sharp with anger, carried through an open window. "You need to pull yourself together," he was saying. "Your mother is already suspicious. Just get through today, and tomorrow we start the paperwork." "But she loves this place." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "It's her whole life." "And what about our life?" Tyler snapped. "Do you want to start our marriage buried in debt? The deal is already in motion. The investors expect results." I moved away, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping. But my heart was pounding. The conversation confirmed everything I had feared and prepared for. As guests began arriving in the afternoon, I finally got to see Sarah in her wedding dress. Despite everything, she looked beautiful, the simple white gown complementing her natural beauty, in a way the elaborate hairstyle and heavy makeup couldn't diminish. When our eyes met, I saw a flash of something like regret before she forced a smile. "You look lovely, sweetheart," I said, taking her hands in mine. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered. "I'm sorry about everything. I never meant for it to be like this." Before I could respond, the wedding planner appeared, announcing it was time to take our places. The ceremony itself was surprisingly beautiful. Walking Sarah down the aisle, where James should have been, I felt a profound mixture of loss and love. The celebrant spoke eloquently about commitment and partnership, words that rang hollow given what I knew about Tyler's intentions. When it came time for my toast at the reception, I spoke from the heart about Sarah's childhood on the farm, the way she used to name the calves and help me in the garden. I talked about James and how proud he would have been of her intelligence and strength. I spoke about the land that had sustained our family for generations, the legacy of hard work and perseverance. "This farm isn't just soil and buildings," I said, raising my glass. "It's the story of our family written in seasons of planting and harvest. May your marriage be equally fruitful and enduring." Tyler's smile didn't reach his eyes as he clinked glasses with me. His parents exchanged glances, clearly displeased with my sentimental speech that emphasized the farm's personal rather than financial value. As the evening progressed, I noticed Tyler drinking heavily, becoming louder and more animated with each glass of champagne. His father, Richard, cornered me by the dessert table, his cologne overpowering in the summer heat. "Diane, we should discuss the transfer of assets," he said without preamble. "Tyler mentioned you'll be signing over the property as a wedding gift. Our attorney has prepared the documents to make it as simple as possible for you." "Did he?" I replied evenly. "That's interesting, since I've never agreed to such an arrangement." Richard's smile tightened. "Perhaps there's been a miscommunication, but surely you see the logic in combining family resources at this juncture. Sarah and Tyler have a bright futures ahead, and this land could be put to much more profitable use." "This land is already being put to exactly the use it was intended for," I said firmly, "and it will continue that way as long as I'm alive." He chuckled as if I'd made a charming joke. "Well, we can discuss the details later. Tonight is for celebration." As he walked away, I caught Sarah's eye across the tent. She was watching our interaction with visible anxiety. Her hands clasped so tightly, her knuckles were white. Tyler stood nearby, deep in conversation, with men I recognized from Frank's description as the developers he'd met in Chicago. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the night wore on. Tyler kept glancing my way, his expression darkening each time our eyes met. After the cake cutting, he whispered something to Sarah that made her face fall. She shook her head slightly, but he grabbed her elbow and guided her toward me with determined steps. By then, I knew what was coming. The band had just finished playing a slow song when Tyler tapped a knife against his champagne flute. The sharp ringing cut through the chatter, drawing everyone's attention. 200 guests turned expectantly toward him, anticipating another toast, or perhaps an announcement about the honeymoon. "Everyone, if I could have your attention." Tyler called his words slightly slurred. "I'd like to share some exciting news about the future of this property." Sarah stood beside him, her smile frozen and eyes panicked. I remained seated at my table, watching the scene unfold with a calm that surprised even me. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I had known this moment would come. "As many of you know, my new mother-in-law has been managing this farm alone since her husband passed away." Tyler continued, gesturing grandly around us. "A remarkable feat for a woman on her own." There were murmurs of agreement, and several people glanced sympathetically my way. I kept my expression neutral, though I noted the condescension in his tone. "But the time has come to look toward the future," Tyler said, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality. "Sarah and I have exciting plans to transform this underutilized land into a premium housing development that will benefit the entire community. New jobs, increased property values, modern homes with spectacular views." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was news to most of the guests, including many of our neighbors who had worked alongside me for decades. Frank caught my eye from across the tent, his expression grim. "So, Diane," Tyler called out suddenly, fixing his gaze on me, "would you please join us up here for a special moment?" The spotlight felt hot as I made my way toward the center of the tent. Sarah wouldn't meet my eyes, staring instead at the ground. Tyler draped an arm around my shoulders in a show of affection that felt possessive rather than warm. As a wedding gift to us, he announced, Diane will be signing over the deed to the farm tonight. Let's give her a round of applause for her generous gift that will secure Sarah's future. The applause was hesitant, uncertain. Many people knew how much this farm meant to me, and the announcement clearly took them by surprise. When the clapping died down, Tyler produced an envelope from his jacket pocket. I've had my attorney draw up the necessary paperwork, he said, no longer bothering to mask the triumph in his voice. All we need now are the keys and your signature, Mom. The term of endearment coming from his lips made my skin crawl. The tent had grown eerily quiet, 200 people, holding their breath, witnessing a moment that had clearly veered from celebration to something else entirely. No, I said simply, the word hanging in the silence. Tyler's smile faltered. I'm sorry, I said no, I repeated, stepping away from his arm. This farm is not for sale or transfer. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Tyler's face flushed dark red, the veins in his neck standing out prominently. Don't be ridiculous, he hissed, lowering his voice though in the silence everyone could still hear. We've discussed this. Sarah and I need this. You're being selfish. We've never discussed this, I corrected him calmly. You assumed I would hand over my home and livelihood because it suited your plans. That was your mistake, not mine. Tyler glanced around suddenly, aware of the audience witnessing his humiliation. His eyes narrowed as he leaned closer. You listen to me, you stubborn old woman, he whispered fiercely. I've already got buyers lined up. I've invested money based on this deal going through. You will sign these papers and give me those damn keys, or I swear I'll make your life a living hell. The answer is still no, I said, keeping my voice steady. Now I suggest we end this conversation and let these good people enjoy the rest of the evening. What happened next occurred so quickly that many guests later said they weren't sure they had seen correctly. Tyler's hand shot out, striking me across the face with such force that I staggered backward. The sound of the slap echoed through the tent, followed by gasps of shock. My cheek burned from the impact, and I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt as I fought to maintain my balance. Through watering eyes, I saw Sarah's hands fly to her mouth in horror. Tyler stood frozen, perhaps shocked by his own action. Straightening my shoulders, I looked him directly in the eyes. Without a word, I turned and walked steadily toward the farmhouse, the crowd parting silently before me. Behind me, I could hear the murmuring begin rapidly growing into a buzz of shocked conversation. As I reached the door to my home, I heard Tyler's voice rising defensively. She's being unreasonable. You don't understand what's at stake here. I closed the door behind me, shutting out his protests and the chaos that was erupting at what should have been my daughter's perfect day. Once inside my farmhouse, I leaned against the door and took several deep breaths. My cheek throbbed where Tyler had struck me, but the physical pain paled in comparison to the ache in my heart. My daughter's wedding day, a moment that should have been filled with joy and celebration, had deteriorated into a nightmare. After collecting myself, I moved with deliberate calm to my study. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. Bill Morgan speaking. Bill, it's Diane, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday evening, but it's an emergency. Bill had been our family attorney since James and I first purchased the farm. He'd handled James's will, helped me through probate, and had become a trusted friend over the decades. Diane, what's wrong? Isn't Sarah's wedding today? Concern laced his voice. Yes, it is, I replied, and I need your help. Remember those recordings I told you about, the conversations I overheard between Tyler and the developers? I need you to move forward with the restraining order, and the cease and desist letters we discussed. 2 weeks earlier, I had visited Bill with my suspicions and evidence. Together, we had prepared legal documents to protect my interests, hoping they would never be needed. "Has something happened?" Bill asked. "Tyler just publicly demanded I sign over the farm as a wedding gift," I explained. "When I refused, he slapped me in front of 200 guests." Bill's sharp intake of breath was audible. "I'll file everything first thing Monday morning," he promised. "Do you need me to come over? Are you safe?" "I'm fine for now," I assured him. "But there's one more thing. Can you call Sheriff Patterson? I'd like him to be aware of the situation, just in case things escalate further." After ending the call with Bill, I moved to the old roll-top desk in the corner of the study. The desk had been James's, and I had maintained it exactly as he left it. Turning the key in the lock, I slid open the hidden compartment he had built into the back panel. Inside was a small safe containing our most important documents, deed to the farm insurance policies, birth certificates, and a USB drive containing recordings of Tyler's conversations about developing the property without my consent. Taking these items, I placed them in my handbag. Just as I closed the study door, I heard a commotion outside. Through the window, I could see Tyler gesticulating wildly in the middle of the reception tent. Sarah stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. Guests were beginning to leave, slipping away from the uncomfortable scene. Drawing a deep breath, I opened my front door and walked back toward the tent. As I approached, I saw Sheriff Dave Patterson's patrol car coming up the driveway. Dave had been a few years behind me in high school, and his family had farmed the next county over for generations. He understood the value of land and legacy in a way Tyler never could. Tyler's face contorted with rage when he spotted me walking toward him. "There she is," he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger. "The woman who just ruined everything. Are you happy now, Diane? Are you satisfied knowing you've destroyed our future?" Before I could respond, he noticed the sheriff's car, and his expression shifted from anger to alarm. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice rising an octave. "Why is there a police car here? What have you done?" Sheriff Patterson approached slowly, his experienced eyes taking in the scene. "Evening, Diane," he said with a nod. "Everything all right here? Got a call about a possible disturbance." "Everything is under control, Dave," I replied calmly. "But I would appreciate it if you could stay for a few minutes. Mr. Reynolds was just leaving." Tyler's face had gone pale. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "It's a private family matter. There's no need for law enforcement." "Assaulting someone is not a private family matter," Frank called out from nearby, several other neighbors nodding in agreement. "We all saw you hit Diane." Tyler's gaze darted frantically around the remaining guests, searching for allies. Finding none, he turned to Sarah. "Tell them this is a misunderstanding," he pleaded. "Tell them your mother is confused. She's getting older, probably misinterpreted our conversation." Sarah looked between her new husband and me, conflict written across her tear-streaked face. In that moment, I saw the little girl who used to run to me with skinned knees and bad dreams, seeking comfort and reassurance. "Tyler," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm, "you hit my mother. Everyone saw it. And I want to know the truth about the farm. Have you already made deals to sell it? Is that why you've been pushing so hard for her to sign it over?" Tyler's expression crumbled, his carefully constructed facade beginning to crack under pressure. "You don't understand," he said desperately. "We're in trouble, Sarah. The investments didn't pay off. We're underwater. I needed this to work." "What investments?" Sarah asked, confusion clouding her features. "What are you talking about?" Tyler ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, disrupting it for the first time I could remember. "I leveraged everything," he admitted, the words tumbling out now that the dam had broken. "My condo, my car, even took out loans in our names. I had a sure thing, a development deal that couldn't miss. But it fell through 3 months ago. The farm was my backup plan. With the location and acreage, we could have recouped everything and made a fortune besides. Sarah staggered back as if physically struck. You took out loans in my name without telling me. Is that even legal? It was for us, Tyler insisted, reaching for her hand. For our future, your mother doesn't need all this land. She's one old woman. We're just starting out. Don't you see how selfish she's being? Sheriff Patterson stepped closer. Mr. Reynolds, I think it might be best if you left the property for now. Tyler's father suddenly appeared at his side, his face a mask of controlled damage limitation. There's clearly been a misunderstanding, Richard said smoothly. My son is understandably emotional on his wedding day. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. Diane, I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. There's nothing to discuss, I replied firmly. The farm is not for sale or transfer, and after what's happened here tonight, I want Tyler off my property immediately. Richard's eyes hardened, though his smile remained fixed. Be reasonable. Everyone has a price. Name yours. Before I could respond, Sarah stepped between us. Stop it, she said, her voice stronger now. Just stop it, all of you. This is supposed to be my wedding day, and it's turned into a nightmare. She turned to face Tyler directly. I want the truth, all of it, now. Under the combined pressure of the sheriff's presence, the watching guests, and his new wife's unwavering gaze, Tyler finally broke. He admitted everything. The failed investments, the mounting debt, the desperate plan to acquire my farm as a last-ditch effort to save himself financially. He confessed to manipulating Sarah, isolating her from me, and planning to sell the property to developers who would bulldoze generations of history for luxury vacation homes. With each revelation, Sarah's expression grew more horrified. When Tyler finally fell silent, she slowly removed her wedding ring and placed it in his palm. I don't know who you are, she whispered, but you're not the man I thought I married. As Tyler began to protest, Sheriff Patterson placed a hand on his shoulder. I think it's time for you to leave, son. You can collect your things tomorrow with an escort. Tyler's hysterical protests echoed across the property as his father guided him toward their car. This isn't over, he shouted back at me. You'll regret this, Diane. No one makes a fool of me. His threats faded as the car disappeared down the driveway, leaving behind a wedding in ruins and a daughter who looked utterly lost. The aftermath of the wedding disaster unfolded in a blur of tears and whispered conversations. Most guests had the good sense to depart quickly, offering awkward congratulations or sympathetic glances as they left. A few close friends and neighbors stayed behind, helping to clean up the evidence of a celebration turned sour. Sarah sat at a table in the now empty reception tent, still in her wedding gown, staring blankly at nothing. I approached cautiously, uncertain of her feelings toward me after everything that had happened. Sarah, I said gently, taking the seat beside her. I'm so sorry about how this turned out. I never wanted to ruin your day. She turned to me, her eyes red from crying, but clearer than I'd seen them in months. You didn't ruin anything, Mom, she said quietly. Tyler did that all by himself. She reached for my hand. Your face! Does it hurt? I touched my cheek, which had begun to bruise. I'll live, I assured her. I'm more worried about you. Sarah's composure crumbled, and she began to sob in earnest. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? The signs were all there, but I ignored them because I wanted so badly to believe he loved me. I wrapped my arms around my daughter, holding her close as she cried. It's not your fault, I murmured into her hair. Tyler is very good at manipulation. He showed you exactly what you wanted to see. As the tent emptied and night fell, Sarah began to share the full extent of Tyler's deception. Over the past year, he had gradually isolated her from friends, controlled their finances, and made subtle comments undermining her confidence. When she expressed doubts or disagreements, he would remind her of her rural upbringing, and imply she didn't understand the sophisticated world he inhabited. "He made me feel like I was lucky he chose me," she admitted, shame coloring her voice. "Like I was somehow less because I grew up here on the farm instead of in his world of private schools and country clubs." "There's no shame in honest work and a loving home," I told her firmly. "Your father and I raised you to value character over status. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that." Sarah nodded, wiping away tears. "I did forget, but I'm remembering now." She looked around at the farm, seeing it, perhaps for the first time in years. "I'm so sorry, Mom. About everything. About the way I've treated you, the things I've said about the farm. I was wrong." "You're here now," I said simply. "That's what matters." We stayed up most of the night talking, truly connecting for the first time in years. Sarah confessed her growing unhappiness in the relationship, the red flags she had ignored, the increasing pressure Tyler had put on her to convince me to sign over the farm. By dawn, we had moved from the tent to the porch swing, wrapped in blankets against the morning chill, watching the sun rise over fields that had sustained our family for generations. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, her head resting on my shoulder. "That's up to you," I replied. "But whatever you decide, you don't have to face it alone." Sarah's response was interrupted by the sound of cars coming up the driveway. Tyler appeared with his father and a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as their attorney. Tyler looked disheveled. His wedding suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot from drinking or crying or both. "We need to talk," he announced, attempting to sound authoritative despite his appearance. "There are legal matters to resolve." I stepped in front of Sarah protectively. "Any communication can go through our attorney. Bill Morgan's number is in the phone book." The lawyer stepped forward, briefcase in hand. "Mrs. Walker, my client has a legal claim to partial ownership of this property through marriage. Additionally, there are joint financial obligations that must be addressed immediately." "Your client has no claim whatsoever," I replied calmly. "And before you continue, you should know that I have recordings of Tyler discussing his plans to coerce me into signing over the property. I also have documentation of the unauthorized inquiries he made with county officials about rezoning my land without my knowledge or consent." Tyler's face drained of color. "You're bluffing," he whispered, but uncertainty tinged his voice. I retrieved my handbag from inside the house and produced the USB drive. "Every conversation you had on my property was recorded, Tyler, including the ones where you discussed using my daughter to manipulate me, and the ones where you admitted to taking out fraudulent loans in Sarah's name without her knowledge." His eyes widened in panic. "You can't do that. It's illegal to record someone without their knowledge." "Actually," I corrected him, "Montana is a one-party consent state. Since the conversations took place on my property, and I was aware of the recording, it's perfectly legal." This wasn't entirely accurate, but Tyler and his lawyer exchanged nervous glances, suggesting they weren't certain enough of the law to call my bluff. Sarah stepped forward, her voice stronger than I had heard it in months. "I want an annulment," she said directly to Tyler, "and I want you to fix whatever financial mess you've created in my name." Tyler's facade finally crumbled completely. "I can't," he admitted, his voice breaking. "There's nothing left to fix. I'm ruined. Don't you understand? Everything is gone unless we can make this deal happen." Richard attempted to salvage the situation. "Perhaps we can reach a compromise," he suggested smoothly. "Diane, what if we purchase just a portion of the property? The most valuable acres for development, leaving you the farmhouse and immediate surroundings. We could offer a very generous price." "The farm stays intact," I replied firmly. "Not 1 acre is for sale." Tyler lunged forward suddenly, his face contorted with rage. "You stupid, stubborn old woman! Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? Millions. You could live like a queen instead of dying alone in this run-down place." Sheriff Patterson, who had returned as promised to oversee the meeting, stepped between us. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Mr. Reynolds, I'd advise you to leave now, before I have reason to arrest you for trespassing, or worse." As Tyler was led back to the car by his father, defeat evident in every line of his body, Sarah called after him. "I'll be filing police reports about the loans you took out in my name," she said, her voice clear and steady, "and contacting the state bar about your conduct. You might want to prepare yourself." The look of shock on Tyler's face as they drove away gave me a small measure of satisfaction, though it couldn't erase the pain of the previous day's events. Sarah turned to me, exhaustion and relief mingling on her face. "Is it okay if I stay here for a while? I don't think I can face going back to Chicago right now." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "This is your home, Sarah. It always has been." 1 week after what local gossips had dubbed the wedding from hell, Sarah and I fell into a surprisingly comfortable routine on the farm. The first few days had been difficult, filled with legal meetings, calls to credit agencies, and the painful process of notifying guests that the marriage was being annulled. Sarah had cried herself to sleep most nights, mourning not just the relationship, but the future she had envisioned for herself. But gradually, something unexpected began to happen. Sarah started joining me for morning chores initially, just to keep busy and distract herself from her troubles. By the 4th day, she was asking questions about crop rotation and cattle breeding topics she had dismissed as boring during her teenage years. "I forgot how peaceful it is here," she commented one morning as we watched the sun rise over the eastern fields. "In Chicago, there's always noise, always someone wanting something from you. Here it's just," she gestured to the expansive landscape, "real." I didn't push or comment, afraid to break the fragile reconnection that was forming. Instead, I simply handed her extra tasks each day, gratified when she completed them with increasing skill and even enthusiasm. By the end of the week, Sarah had set up her laptop on the porch, working remotely on the projects she could salvage from her job. Her boss had been understanding about her situation, allowing her to take extended leave while continuing some client relationships. "I'm thinking about ways to modernize the farm operation," she told me one evening as we sat at the kitchen table reviewing bills. "There are grants available for sustainable agriculture initiatives. We could apply for funding to update irrigation systems, maybe even install solar panels to reduce energy costs." The casual "we" didn't escape my notice, but again I simply nodded and encouraged her ideas. Sarah had always been intelligent and resourceful qualities that had served her well in finance but could be equally valuable on the farm. Meanwhile, the legal aftermath of Tyler's schemes continued to unfold. Bill Morgan confirmed that Tyler had indeed taken out several loans using Sarah's information, a clear case of fraud that carried serious penalties. The recordings I had made proved invaluable, documenting not only his plans for the farm, but also admissions of financial wrongdoing. A restraining order was quickly granted, legally prohibiting Tyler from approaching the farm or contacting either of us. The annulment proceedings moved forward, expedited by the evidence of fraud and coercion. Tyler's parents, seeing the writing on the wall, suddenly became eager to settle matters quietly, offering to cover the wedding costs and some of the fraudulent loans to avoid public scandal. "They're worried about their reputation," Bill explained during a consultation. "Richard Reynolds sits on several prestigious boards. A son being investigated for fraud would be very awkward for him." Throughout it all, our community rallied around us in a way that touched me deeply and surprised Sarah completely. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles and offers of help with farm work. Local businesses refused payment for wedding services, insisting that the circumstances warranted cancellation without penalty. Even the sheriff made regular drive-bys, ensuring that Tyler hadn't violated the restraining order. "I had no idea people cared this much," Sarah remarked after our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Keller, delivered her 3rd pie of the week. "That's the difference between here and the city," I told her. "These people have known you since you were born. They watched you grow up. To them, you're not just a customer or a colleague. You're family. 3 months after the wedding disaster, Sarah brought home a stack of agricultural journals and spreadsheets. Spreading them across the dining table, she walked me through a comprehensive plan for transitioning portions of our traditional operations to organic methods that could command premium prices in specialty markets. We'd start small, she explained, pointing to a field map she'd created. Convert about 20 acres to organic vegetables, focusing on heirloom varieties that restaurants in Bozeman and Missoula are desperate for. The profit margin is significantly higher than conventional crops, which would offset the reduced yield during transition. I studied her carefully. You've put a lot of thought into this. Sarah nodded, a hint of nervousness in her expression. I have. Mom, I'd like to stay, not just for a visit or until I get back on my feet, but permanently. I want to learn how to run this place, how to preserve it for the future. Joy bloomed in my chest, but I kept my voice measured. The farm life isn't easy, Sarah. It's early mornings and late nights, battling weather and market prices. It's physically demanding and financially uncertain. Are you sure it's what you want after living in the city? I'm sure, she said firmly. What I had in Chicago wasn't real. It was all facade and pretense. This, she gestured around us, this is real. This is worth working for. That evening, we sat on the porch swing that had been my favorite thinking spot since James died. Sarah brought out 2 glasses of lemonade, settling beside me as the sunset painted the sky in spectacular shades of orange and pink. Do you think Dad would be proud of me? She asked quietly. After everything I've done. The way I treated you, the way I almost let Tyler take the farm. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Your father understood making mistakes, I told her. What would make him proud is seeing you learn from them. Seeing you become the strong woman you were always meant to be. Sarah leaned her head against my shoulder, just as she used to do as a little girl. I'm getting there, she whispered, one day at a time. 6 months after the wedding, that wasn't the farm had taken on new energy. Sarah's ideas for sustainable practices had begun to bear fruit quite literally. Our first harvest of organic heirloom tomatoes had been sold out before they were even picked, thanks to Sarah's networking with high-end restaurants in nearby cities. Frank, our neighbor, who had first warned me about Tyler, had become a regular visitor, helping with equipment repairs and offering advice on Sarah's initiatives. I didn't miss the way his eyes followed her around the property, or the way she smiled more brightly when he arrived. At 62, Frank had been widowed nearly as long as I had, and his quiet strength reminded me in many ways of James. Your daughter's brought this place back to life, he commented one afternoon, as we watched Sarah talking animatedly with a local veterinarian who had begun stopping by more frequently than strictly necessary for the cattle. She has, I agreed, and herself along with it. The legal battles with Tyler had finally concluded. With the evidence against him mounting, he had accepted a plea deal that required restitution of the fraudulent loans and community service, avoiding jail time, but leaving him with a record that would forever impact his career in finance. Last we heard, he had moved to California to work for a cousin's real estate business, his dreams of wealth and status substantially diminished. As autumn painted our maple trees in brilliant scarlet, Sarah and I sat together on the hill overlooking the farm, the spot where James and I had picnicked when we first considered buying the property. Do you ever regret not selling? Sarah asked. You could have taken Tyler's money, bought a nice condo, traveled the world, had an easier life. I considered the question seriously, looking out over the land that had shaped my life for so many decades. Not for a second, I finally answered. This farm isn't just property, Sarah. It's part of who I am, who we are as a family. Some things can't be measured in dollars. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. I understand that now. It took almost losing it to realize its true value. She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for standing your ground that day, for being strong when I couldn't be." "That's what mothers do," I said simply. "And someday when this place is yours, you'll do the same for your children." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across fields that had sustained our family for generations, I felt a deep sense of peace. By refusing to give up what mattered most to me, I had not only preserved our legacy, but had regained something even more precious, my daughter. The farm would continue changing and evolving with new ideas and approaches, but always rooted in the values that James and I had established so many years ago. Hard work, integrity, perseverance, love of the land and one another. Have you ever had to stand your ground against someone trying to take what was rightfully yours? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones that matter most. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own strength. Thank you for listening, and remember, some things are worth fighting for, even when it means standing alone.